The car market's broken, and that's not an exaggeration. Things look like they're getting better on paper, prices are dipping, new cars are creeping back up, and manufacturers are offering incentives like it's 2019 again. But none of that actually fixes what's really wrong. Interest rates are still high. Used car inventories are running on fumes, EVs have lost their hype, and buyers are stuck between overpriced new cars and used cars that cost almost as much. The friggin' market feels rigged from every angle. So today, we're breaking down why the car market is still a mess in 2025 and why it's probably gonna stay that way. Starting with the fake car market recovery. New car sales hit nearly 16 million units in 2024, marking the best year since the pandemic flipped the market upside down. Sounds like progress, but it's not even close. We're still short by 1.5 to 2 million units compared to pre-pandemic sales, and prices aren't helping. The average new car now costs $47,870, and that's a slight drop from the record-breaking $49,929 in late 2022, which was still out of reach for most buyers. Manufacturers gave discounts like never before in 2024, with incentives cutting prices by up to 7.2% in August, which was the biggest drop since 2021. But auto loan interest rates are also stuck between 7% and 9%. So even if you score a discount, those savings get eaten up by brutal financing costs. And stability doesn't mean affordability. Sure, steady interest rates help buyers plan ahead, but that doesn't mean they're actually buying. Between rising prices and suffocating loan rates, millions of buyers are still saving to have enough money to upgrade their cars. And now that it's 2025, dealers are still struggling to move inventory. The market might look stable in the first quarter, but it's a mess that's barely holding together. If you thought car prices would settle down by 2025, think again. The average price for a new car is still hovering around $47,870, and while that's still better than 2022, it's nowhere near affordable for most buyers. For context, back in 2019, the average was closer to $36,000, meaning prices have surged by nearly 33% in just 6 years. Used cars aren't much better. According to vAuto, the average used car price in early 2025 was around $25,128, which is still high despite hopes that prices would crash after the pandemic and interest rates are punishing buyers even more. The average loan rate for a used car hit 10.09% in January 2025, which is the highest it's been in over 3 years. Oh, and the average daily income is still the same. While manufacturers and financial analysts point to rising incomes as a justification for high prices, real-world data shows that most people aren't seeing huge increases in wages. Inflation is eating up any gains, and essential goods like groceries and gas are more expensive than ever. In short, buyers are getting priced out. Between inflated vehicle costs, soaring interest rates, and stagnating wages, car ownership is becoming a luxury fewer people can afford. More buyers are staying out of the market entirely so that the fake market recovery won't last for long. 3 years after the pandemic threw a wrench into global supply chains, dealerships are still scrambling for inventory and buyers are left paying the price. Right now, the US market is missing 5 million used cars compared to pre-pandemic levels. Now this all goes back to 2020 to 2022 when factory shutdowns and chip shortages strangled new car production. Fewer new cars sold means fewer trade-ins and lease returns, and that gap still hasn't closed in 2025. The inventory numbers are brutal. The average days supply of used cars sits at 35 days. Now that's 9 days lower than last year and 11 days below the industry average. It's actually the lowest it's been in years, and there's no sign of relief on the horizon. The average listing price for a used car is now hovering around $25,128. Even with higher interest rates eating away at buyer budgets, these prices refuse to budge. The most in-demanded brands, Ford, Chevy, Toyota, Honda, and Nissan, account for 51% of all used vehicle sales, and their prices are sticking like glue. The shortage is jamming up the entire market. Fewer trade-ins means buyers have less room to negotiate on new car purchases, and dealers aren't offering the discounts that they used to. Until automakers pump out enough new cars to ease the pressure, used car prices will keep holding buyers hostage. Dealerships are still struggling to fill their lots with cars that actually sell. New car inventory is sitting at a 26% higher supply than it was a year ago, And while luxury brands like BMW and Mercedes have recovered faster, mainstream automakers are still lagging behind. This is because automakers are prioritizing high-profit models. Instead of cranking out budget-friendly sedans, they're flooding the market with expensive trucks and SUVs, chasing higher margins. Meanwhile, the shortage of entry-level cars is pushing buyers straight into the used market, which is already stretched thin. And it's not just new cars. The shortage of models from 2020 to 2022, thanks to factory shutdowns, means there's less used inventory hitting the market. Lease returns are down, trade-ins are rare, and those who typically upgrade every few years are holding on to their cars longer, choking the supply even more. Now, this is keeping the prices high, especially for affordable models like a Toyota Corolla. So, until automakers shift focus back to producing more budget-friendly vehicles, don't expect this shortage to ease anytime soon, no matter how many new crossover SUVs roll off an assembly line. In 2025, auto loan interest rates are sitting at 10.09% on average, which is the highest it's ever been according to data from Cox Automotive. Now that's nearly double what rates were just a couple years ago. That right there is a deal breaker for most buyers. Even with dealerships slashing prices and offering incentives, the brutal loan rates eat away any potential savings. A car that might have been affordable at a 4% interest a few years ago now costs thousands more over the life of a loan. The situation is especially bad for borrowers with subprime credit. Many are being hit with rates closer to 14 to 18%, turning what should have been a reasonable car payment into a financial nightmare. And it's not just the cars themselves that are getting more expensive. Insurance rates are through the roof, and that's pushed monthly costs even higher. Even with a slight drop in new car prices, the affordability problem isn't going away. Higher wages might help offset costs for some buyers, but it doesn't make up for the extra money lost to interest for most people. Electric vehicles were supposed to be the future of the car market. Right now, they're just gathering dust on dealership lots. Despite all the hype, EVs are falling flat with buyers, and the numbers prove it. EVs made up just 7.6% of all U.S. car sales in early 2025, which is a slight increase from 5.9% in 2023, but nowhere near the market dominance automakers were expecting. Worse yet, unsold EV inventory has surged by more than 80% since mid-2023, leaving dealers stuck with rows of shiny, untouched cars. A good EV costs around $53,500. Now that's around $6,000 more than a gas-powered car, which comes in at around $47,800. Even with tax credits up to $7,500, that gap price is hard for most buyers to swallow, especially with interest rates hovering around 7 to 9%. The charging infrastructure still being a nightmare also affects the sales. The US has roughly 170,000 public charging stations, but most of those are clustered in major cities, so all you can really get is range anxiety when you're traveling. So it's pretty easy to see why people are still choosing gas cars over EVs. Oh, and battery replacements can also run up to $20,000, and insurance premiums for EVs are about 25% higher than their gas-powered cars. It's a recipe for hesitation, not mass adoption. Even automakers have started to backpedal. Ford slashed production targets for the F-150 Lightning, and GM delayed its ultimate EV rollout after admitting the demand just ain't there. Mainstream automakers like Chevy, Ford, Hyundai, and Kia finally showed up to the party, moving 376,000 units in 2024. Now, that's a solid 58% increase over 2023, which is a big jump, but EVs still make up a tiny fraction of total US auto sales. Meanwhile, Tesla and Rivian are still hogging over half the EV market, leaving legacy brands scrambling to catch up. Now, here's where things get interesting. For the first time ever, EVs might technically be cheaper than their gas-powered rivals. Thanks to federal tax credits, cheaper battery electric vehicles in 2025 will cost you around $44,000, while the average gas-powered car, including hybrids, is closer to $45,000. But there's a catch. Those credits are doing most of the heavy lifting. For brands like Volkswagen and Chevy, up to 81% of buyers say the tax break was the main reason they went electric. But sales are still stalling even with the wave of new models set to drop in 2025, like the revamped Tesla Model Y, Jeep Wagoneer S, and Hyundai Ioniq 9. Consumer demand just ain't rising fast enough. Stellantis is trying to split the difference with the Ram 1500 Ramcharger as a hybrid solution that mixes a big battery pack with a 6-cylinder gas engine acting as a generator. It's a clever way to win over truck buyers who aren't ready to gamble on full electric just yet. With over 58 new EV models expected by the end of 2025, the market's getting crowded fast. Automakers are flooding the lineup with new options, but the real problem isn't variety, as convincing buyers that going electric won't be more hassle than it's worth. Back in the early 2000s, buyers would stick with familiar names like Ford, Toyota, or Honda like clockwork. But in 2025, their loyalties hit rock bottom for old brands like Buick. Recent data shows brand loyalty has dropped to 47%, and that's the lowest level in over 2 decades. Buyers aren't returning to brands out of habit anymore. They're chasing better value, newer tech, and reliability, no matter where it comes from. The old school dealership hustle ain't cutting it anymore, because 84% of buyers now research online before stepping foot on a lot. They walk in knowing the exact model, trim, and price they're willing to pay, and that leaves little room for dealers to pull their usual tricks. But the biggest shift is people just not replacing their cars as quickly as they used to. The average car on American roads is now 12.5 years old, which is the oldest it's ever been. Between high prices, interest rates pushing 9%, and rising maintenance costs, most drivers are holding on to their cars for as long as possible. Brands like Toyota and Honda are thriving off this trend thanks to their reliability, while automakers like Stellantis are tanking because their cars don't exactly inspire long-term confidence. New car sales might have hit nearly 16 million in 2024, but that's still fallen short of the 1.5 to 2 million units we saw in 2018. Prices are still high and buyers are drowning in auto loan interest rates between 7 and 9%. There just ain't enough affordable used cars to meet demand. Models from 2020 to 2022 that should be hitting the market now simply don't exist. And there's only a 35-day supply of used cars under 15 grand, which the majority of people can actually afford, and that's far below the industry average. EVs were supposed to be the big disruptors, but that bubble's starting to burst too. Sales of cars like the Chevy Bolt EUV and Hummer EV are horrible, while charging infrastructure and high upfront costs scare off potential buyers. With possible tariffs, unstable fuel prices, and consumer behavior shifting faster than automakers can keep up, the future of the market looks more like a gamble than a guarantee. Some brands like Toyota are fine though, with lineups and strong hybrid offerings. Meanwhile, others like Chevy and Dodge are struggling to make enough sales. Well, y'all, thanks for watching. At this point, predicting where the car market is headed is like throwing darts blindfolded, and every automaker knows it.